Hi everyone, Mr. Markwick here. The purpose of this video is to show you how to calculate compound interest using the graphics calculator, but specifically when it comes to investing. Now, when using the graphics calculator, you can see I've got the emulator here on the right of the screen. There are some values that we need to input in order to determine, for example, a future value of an investment. So let's run through what those variables represent as we input them into the graphics calculator. So the first one there is N, which represents the number of compounding periods. So for example, if you invest money for 2 years and interest is compounded monthly, then the number of compounding periods is 2 times 12 or 24. I is the interest rate, which is left as a percentage when using the graphics calculator. PV is that present value of the investment, or we've spoken about it before as the principal. So that's the amount that you actually invest. Now it's really important. There's a note down here that essentially says that we need to make sure that when we're inputting PV for an investment, we set it as a negative value because it is considered an outgoing. PMT represents the payment each time period. Now, in the examples I'm going through today, there won't be any regular additional payments made into the investment account, but we'll look at some examples in the future where you will be making some regular contributions as well to that savings or investment account. FV represents the future value of the investment, so what the value would be after a certain period of time. PY represents the number of payments per year, and CY represents the number of compounding periods per year. So for example, if interest is being compounded monthly, then C/Y would be 12. Now, PY, although we're not making any regular payments, because the compound interest is being paid into the account, for example, monthly, that would also be set as 12. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our first example here. And from the question, we can work out what those values are. So it says here, Sally invests $15,000 into an account that pays 4.25% per annum, which is compounded monthly. How much is her investment worth after 5 years? So first of all, N, the number of compounding periods, because it's 5 years and interest is compounded monthly. N is 5 times 12 or 60. The interest rate given there is 4.25%. So we leave that as a percentage. The present value is 15,000, but remember we're going to put in a negative value here, so it's minus 15,000. PMT, remember that's the payment per term, but we're not making any payments, so we'll set that as 0. Future value is what we're trying to solve for here, so we'll just leave that for now. And payments per year is 12, as well as compound periods per year, because the interest is being compounded monthly here. So we'll set those both as 12. Now, we head into our graphics calculator. So toggle over to the finance section. Once you're in there, we're looking at compound interest. So hit the F2 button. And then we just simply put in our values that we have here. So N, 5 times 12 or 60. The interest rate is 4.25%. Present value, so minus 15,000. PMT we can leave, future value we can leave. Now PY and CY by default are set to 12. So now we're being asked to solve for that future value here. So to do that, you just press the F5 key, which correlates with FV on the screen. So after 5 years, based on those parameters, the investment account will be worth $18,544, and we'll round that up to 53 cents. Okay, so that's that example. We can also use the graphics calculator to determine things like, in this case, what the principal would be, given some other parameters, how long or the number of compounding periods you would need to leave, an investment in an account for, etc. So let's look at the second example here. It says, Helena is investing money into a term deposit for paying 5.2% per annum, which is compounded quarterly, so 4 times per year. How much does she need to deposit now in order to collect $5,000 at the end of 3 years? So N is 3 times 4 because we're talking about 3 years with interest being compounded quarterly. So that's 12 or 3 times 4. Interest rate there is given 5.2%. The present value is what we're trying to work out. So how much is she going to invest? What's that principal? The future value, she wants it to get up to $5,000. PMT, again, we're going to leave that as 0. And PY and CY here are going to be 4, simply because that interest is being compounded quarterly. So again, we can put those values into that screen on our graphics calculator. So if you just press exit there, you can just overwrite these values. So again, start with N, 3 times 4. Interest rate is 5.2. The present value is what we're trying to solve for. So you can leave that or just set it as 0 for now. PMT, again, leave that as 0. Future value, that's going to be a positive 5,000 because we've got access to that. And PY and CY there are both 4. Now, notice that if you do change P/Y, payments per year, to 4, it'll automatically change compound periods per year to 4, but it doesn't work the other way around. Anyway, we're now solving for PV, or the present value. What's the principal that needs to be invested? It's going to be obviously less than 5,000. So in order to solve that, we're just going to press F3, which correlates with that PV on the screen. It'll tell us that Helena would need to invest $4,282 and approximately 10 cents in order to get the $5,000 after 3 years. All right, next example. It has here, for how long must Magnus invest $4,000 at 6.45%, compounded half yearly, so twice per year, for it to amount to $10,000. So that's a good growth. Let's have a look. So N is what we're trying to solve for here. Interest rate is 6.45%. PV is 4,000, but again, we'll set that as a negative value for investing. Future value is going to grow to 10,000. That's a positive value. PMT, again, let's just assume that's 0. Now, PY and CY, because it's half yearly, we're going to set those values to 2. All right, now again, just press exit here, take you back into that compound interest screen, and just overwrite those values again. So, and we can leave that, or again, just set it to 0 for now. Interest rate is 6.45%. Present value minus 4,000. PMT, leave that at 0. The future value is going to be 10,000. And PY and CY both 2. Okay, so then we just ask the calculator to solve for N for us based on those parameters. So F1. So this is telling us N is 28.9, or approximately 29. But that's 29 compound periods, or 29 because it's interest being compounded half yearly. It's 29 half years. Okay, so what I would do is I would probably, it's more appropriate to express that as years. So 29 divided by 2 to give us the number of years, because it's 29 half years, so divide that by 2. So that would give us 14.5 or 14 and a half years. Okay, so Magnus would have to leave that in, 14 and a half years in order to turn that $4,000 into $10,000 based on that interest rate and interest being compounded half yearly. All right, last example for this video here. It says Iman deposits $5,000 into an account that compounds interest monthly, so 12 times per year. 2.5 years later, or 2.5 years later, the account has a balance of $6,000. What annual rate of interest has been paid? So here we're trying to work out the interest rate. So that's our unknown. Now N is going to be 2.5 years, or 2.5 times by 12, because it's being compounded monthly. The present value, or the principal there, is 5,000. Again, we set that to a negative value for investing. Future value is going to be 6,000. That's what the investment grows to. PMT, again, for this video, for these examples, there are no extra savings contributions, so set that as 0. And PY and CY both 12 because interest is being compounded monthly. So let's go ahead and put those values back in. So press exit here, graphics calculator, set N to 2.5 times 12. Interest rate, we can just leave that for now. We'll set it to 0. PV minus 5,000. PMT, leave that at 0. Future value, want that to grow to 6,000. And PY and CY are both set to 12 there. Okay, so we're just trying to work out the interest rate. In order to do that, obviously we then would press F2, which correlates with that interest percentage button. on the screen. So the interest rate needed would be approximately 7.32. We're rounding that up, 7.32%. All right, so that's it. That's how to use the graphics calculator when you're dealing with compound interest and specifically for investments.